So the next part of how we work with the Aquafadas plugin is to create a from scratch bespoke app environment that obviously you make to form whatever functions you need it to. Now, when we're working in this way, it's a little bit different. Again, in the project manager, you press the plus button, and this time we'll call it our brochure, and we select the project type of AVE MAG rather than AVE PDF. This gives us the option to work in dual aspect, i.e. horizontal and vertical design, or we can clearly limit it to one of those variants. However, one of the really nice elements of the Aquafadas plugin is how it allows us to create dual designs. So it copes with the different orientations that a tablet can be used in. This is one of the key benefits of the plugin. So with both of those areas ticked, we're going to press OK, and we have the beginnings of our new project. Now, I'm going to press the New button there, and you can see that that's brought up a new InDesign document, and we'll just make sure that that's saved, and you can see that it's just a blank document at the moment. And if I just move that over a little bit, we can see it a little bit better. So we're starting from scratch. We haven't got any pre-existing content, and we'll just make a little bit of space so that we can see these a little bit more easily. Now, what you have is an extra part of the interactivity pane, which is this button down here, Change Orientation. At the moment, we are in landscape mode, and then if we change it, we are in portrait mode. Now, it's important to explain the difference between the two. When you are working in one orientation and you place some content, you are placing that content actually on both designs, both orientations. But when you position it, you are positioning it for just one of those orientations, whichever one you happen to be clicked on. It's also important to look at the way the project manager works, because you can see that this project has an article, and that's in this section here, and that represents the right and left swipe. So you move between articles right to left, swiping on the device, and you move between pages in that article up and down. So it's important to think about that in terms of the structure of the project that you're designing from scratch. Now, let's just have a look how this works in practice. So we're working in the portrait orientation, and so we're just going to get a shape and we're going to place that on the page here, and all of the usual ways that you work in InDesign hold true. So we're just going to make that a grey background here, and I'm just going to take off the frame around it, and then we'll see that if we switch orientation, obviously this is not how we want it to appear. So let's flip that round, like so, and then we can see that it's now sitting, as we move it there, in its correct position. Now if we flip between the two orientations, once again, you can see that the software has remembered the actions that we've just done. But let's make it a little bit more complicated. Well, we're just going to take off things like the showing the frame edges and such like to simplify the view of what we're doing. All I'm going to do now is, working in portrait orientation, pop a little picture box on there and place a logo with some space around it that I've just prepared a little bit earlier. And I'm just going to move that into position. Now, the position that I want that to be in is, as we talked about already, going to be different when it comes to the different orientations with the tablet. So let's now look in landscape form. It flips round, and obviously we don't want it to be there. We will want it to be sitting in the middle of the document. And so we can just reposition that, like so. And obviously you're just using all the normal tools that InDesign lets you have. So we've placed some content, but we've given it now 2 different positions within the software, and it remembers what we've done. Let's add something to this. So we're just going to grab a picture box, and I'm going to add this content. Now I'm going to put a little JPEG in there, which is just going to represent our show reel that we're going to pop in here. Now this frame, we're now going to attach a movie to it. So this movie, it's simply a matter of navigating away to the place that you're going to store all this stuff, selecting our movie, and away you go. So you've now got a path, and you can decide how the user can interact or not with that path to the movie. Now we want to have it on autoplay. We want it to probably close when it comes to the end of the movie. We don't want it endlessly looping round. But we don't want user interaction. And we're going to hide the controls. So we've got some settings there that we have applied. Now, as we were looking at before, if we switch to the landscape view, our extra content has gone in, but obviously it's in slightly the wrong place. So all we have to do is reposition it. And so now we've got this front page of our app sorted in the 2 orientations. And that's a very, very simple way of dealing with the redraw issue when designing for a tablet. Now, let's think that in this section of our app, we'd like to have a second page to this first article. So just like you would normally, we're going to grab an extra page in the Pages tab in InDesign, and there it is. Now we can actually bring in the elements that we've already got existing. So if we click on that background, we can just duplicate it and drag it down in the normal way that you would interact in InDesign. Now in this case, I've prepared a different little background that I want to place in, and it's just a picture. And so we're just going to place it like a picture you would in InDesign normally. And when you place stuff, obviously what you want to do is be careful that you're not doing too much zoom into a file. You're not, in other words, overscaling it within the application. You want to prepare your graphics at the size that you want them to appear. Now here, it's easy to see that in the portrait orientation, we would probably want it sitting at the top. But if we flip over now, go to our landscape orientation, you're going to want to reposition that. Now, with that done, we can just zoom in. And I'd like to have another little movie playing when we hit this page too. So I'm just going to add a frame, and I'm not even going to put a picture into it. It doesn't have to be like that. Any frame that you create can have functionality. That's the beauty of it. So this frame, again, I'm going to say, right, I'm going to have a different movie playing in that section. There we go. And even though there's nothing appearing there, that is already set up. And again, we're going to have autoplay, and we're not going to have user interaction, and we're not going to have controls. So once more, if we flip over to our portrait version, there's the frame. In order to have it in the right place for our portrait design, all you have to do is move that over, like so. So we're well on the way to creating a multiple page app, if you like, to represent a company, a service, or so on. In other words, it doesn't have to be bringing in pre-existing stuff. You can work from scratch in this way. But let's go back to the project manager. which is here. And what we're going to do now is attached to this project, we're going to have another new section. And you can see it's a second new document in InDesign. And it works really rather well because the way InDesign tabs up your new documents, you've got that first section of your app and then the second section here. So obviously it's really easy if you have similar content just to grab hold of it like so. We don't actually want the movie bit, but we want that logo in the background. And then we're just going to go to our new article, turn it around, and we can just copy and paste between the two. There we go. And so all the positioning is already done. But in this one, I want to actually change this. So I'm just going to pull that up. And this is going to be our about the company little section, because this is another crucial element to show you, and that is how we deal with text and scrolling text, because it's another area that people worry about. How would we deal with those two problems? Because in the portrait orientation with text you've got a lot more space. In our landscape orientation, as we just move to it, again we only changed that size of that picture box in portrait, so now we have the opportunity to reconfigure this slightly, and we'll just move that up a little bit. We're going to have less area here. And so if I now bring in a text box, and I'll grab some text that we've just got previously created here, and it's quite a lot of it. It's a little bit of information all about the agency, and we'll just grab that and pop that in. And we're going to just make it look at a reasonable size and such like for these demo purposes. And obviously we'll want that to be in white. So the point here is that in the landscape orientation, your design is probably going to be such that you're going to want to process the text in a different way to make it look right. And so if we just tweak this a little bit, you're going to want to get all your formatting right, and so far much stuff that we wouldn't do. But clearly here, if I pull up that box to a place that you'd reasonably have it, you've got overmatter, which is the plus sign at the bottom of the text box. Now that's in landscape orientation. If we flip over now to portrait, it's picked up the position of the box, but we're going to move it. We're going to have it there, and then we can extend that down and have all our text appearing in the frame of the portrait orientation on the tablet. So we've now got non-scrolling text because we're able to show it all when we're in portrait, or in landscape to keep the kind of nice design. We've left over matter, which will create a scrolling environment. Now, that's another very neat and tidy way of dealing with a problem when it comes to the fluency and freedom that the tablet environment offers. Now, the final bit that we're going to just show is how you put extra content into a nice tight design. Now, we've only been working with a couple of little sections here to show you the nice way that this plugin works, but if you imagine that you don't necessarily want extra pages for everything that you might want in an app, everything that you might want to communicate. So here we're going to just create some PDFs that you can bring in and have a tap command just to show it as an overlay, and you'll be able to scroll through it, zoom in and out, flip through the pages, but you're not creating extra pages within the actual app or extra articles. You're just creating something that will pop up and then be collapsed again. And it's a very, very easy process. So if we just create a square, like so, in the kind of common way that you would. So it's just a black square, and then we're going to give this some functionality. So if I just zoom in here and pop a text box over that, and I'm just going to copy in a style. So all the ways that you would work in InDesign carry over to this. So let's say London price list, and then we'll pop that on top like so. Let's just make this look slightly pretty. And the extra element is that you can group things together as you would normally, and then give this group functionality. So it doesn't have to just be frames on their own, it can be a group of frames which now we're going to give functionality. Now you see that we can go, we've got, even though we're on a group, we've still got our interactive elements available to us. If we hit the button key and we create, and what we want to do is we want the reader to show a pop-up. So by tapping on here, it'll create a pop-up. Now the pop-up type we want is modal, and then we edit it. Now here, we'll see that we've got options for movie, slideshow, or HTML page. Now, although what we're going to do is link this to a PDF, it is actually an HTML page action. It's that type of action. So we hit that. What we want to do is direct this group to a folder that we have assets in. And so we hit the folder rather than a feed, and we navigate to where our PDFs are. And that gives the plugin a path to this folder. And then where it's saying HTML page, what we actually want to do is go and bring up the title of the PDF that we want to use. And so if we go and grab that, and that's the UK price list here. So we want the whole of the title of the file, including .pdf, and then we pop back here, and instead of index HTML, what we need to do is copy in the UK price list file name. Again, we can allow interaction, we can allow it to be scrollable, and we can let the user scale it as well. And so that item now has this pop-up interactivity. Now, the final extension of that we're going to show is that group can clearly be duplicated. So if I, just using the Alt key as you would normally in InDesign, just dupe that group, and then moving to the text key, I'm going to change London to Paris, like so. And we'll just make that look a little prettier. And then when we go back and click on it as the group, you can see that it's still got this functionality already set up. And so if we edit that pop-up, and then clearly we just got to change this file title. So let's go over and we'll do just that. So that's the French one. Copy that in, and hey presto, we've got that little group here is having a different functionality. But you can see how the shortcuts that you would commonly use in InDesign for doing any layout carry forward and have similar uses in the Aquafadas rich media environment. So to round this off, now let's move over to our simulator. And looking at a version of this complete clean build of an app, you can see how this works. Now we've got the front page with the movie viewing, and then if we scroll down, we flip down through it, we've got our second page with that extra different movie showing there. If we go left to right, so that's moving from one article to the next, you can see that we've got an about page, and that's in the portrait view with all the text showing. And we remember we just created those PDF overlays, and so if we hit London price list, you can see that that flips into our price list of stuff, and you can just tap off it, and then that Paris one, and you can see that that's given us a different link. And further functionality that we built into this version is the fact that if you move to the landscape version, this about text is scrolling. Now you can see that in this section that I'm showing you, there's extra little bits that I've added in, like I've added in a click-through to move us from one bit to the next. So, allowing the user to have some hints on where you might go next, and so on and so forth. And so little inquiry forms, all of that kind of stuff. So this was just very much a beginning of how you might work. But hopefully you can see that it is very, very straightforward to move your thinking from a print environment into a rich media e-environment and work from scratch and not have to worry that that's not something that you've done before, and that really the world is your oyster in terms of using the functionality of the Aquafadas plugin to InDesign.